Looking at like the acoustical features, like the suprasegmentals and those, because we know that we have an idea of where they should be developmentally, and then we want to see, like, in terms of the sounds that they're producing, where are they? And not to go too far back, but to go back to the first thing that I want to talk about. I wanted to talk about the saved R. That made no sense. That was like a horrible transition. The point is that the saved R is also really good for, in the beginning we talked about how clinicians would evaluate this child, and if he's receiving sufficient or insufficient amount of hearing through his hearing aids. The saved R is actually a really good tool because it not just looks, it doesn't just track and help you track how a child is doing pre-implantation and post-implantation. It also tracks to see how that child is doing post-implantation along a normative sample of other children who have had implants, so that you can see where that child should be developing in relationship to other children who have had cochlear implants. So that is why it's critical to use, because of that normative sample that it has for these children. The good thing, the reason why I wanted to take it back to the first point is because when it's asking about how we're looking at how the child's hearing is, we're going to want to use the saved R. So we're not just going to want to do speech perception, but just for that saved R piece, we're going to want to do look at the pre-vocal development and looking at those sounds, because we want to make sure that we see that we have that information, so that when they get implanted, then we're able to see how they were hearing aids versus cochlear implants. So that information is going to be important to have in the beginning before they're implanted. Does that make sense? I'm trying to say, like, you don't just want to give the saved R after implantation and to just monitor how they're doing. You want to give it to them when you're assessing their hearing level, because it also has it was also used to determine, to look at children comparatively with hearing aids versus cochlear implants, and then you can determine what level it can be there. And there's like trajectory expectations, if they would switch, and then when they're there, you can see if they're falling within those trajectories. So that's why it's important to do it at that moment. Does that make sense?
So it should be given before and after implantation.
Exactly, exactly. Because it's a tool that can be used. It's a double whammy tool. It can give you those two things at the same time. Well,
yeah, there's another article, or there's an article I put in there that specifically talks about how you can use these different evaluations, like before implantation and after. And I think this article right here, and that's what the CASP stands for, so, and it outlines how you would use it in the clinic, and then also, like, you know, after 3 months, after 6 months, blah, 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 and then it gives you some data. So I just found out about the CASP today, so we've all been talking about the saved R or whatever. So pretty much think of it as the CASP is like an updated version of the saved R. Same authors, they use like the exact same steps and they add some stuff to it. So I guess just dig down here.
Yeah, dig that one to see what's the updates are.
But in the midterm, like I put the saved R, and then Keith was like, that's the answer he was pretty much looking for.
When was it updated?
2008.
Yeah, so,
Because the articles before that talked about saved R were 2006, 2007, and 2008. It looks like they switched it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and it gives you the levels. Like Chris was saying, the 2006 and the 2007 will give you a really good basis to understand the different levels, how it's done, and it's a little confusing, but just really focus on the words, you know, and like really try to understand it, because once you do, you'll see like how you can just, how it can be used. Does that make sense? That doesn't make sense. Just open your eyes and read, and then like we'll just go in there.
Alright, so.
Oh, that's still not done. I was going to talk about that.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Sorry.
Okay.
All right, so going back to the third part. So then we also have to talk about if they're deemed a candidate for cochlear implants, how are we going to evaluate them between 1 and 2 ages to see if the implants are beneficial and to determine their potential. Like I said, the saved R here, you can obviously see that exactly what it said is why, because it has that trajectory, it has those norms. You can see how they're developing. On top of that, we could also do the auditory skill development article, which Michelle quoted or cited here. And these are the different steps that it goes through in order to see what you're looking for. when this child is developing with cochlear implants. And then these on the bottom, acquiring auditory skills, it's like extra information. It doesn't talk, it's not asking us to see like how they're going to be acquiring it, but this is just so you guys can get an idea of when children have cochlear implants. This article talked about how that language may be acquired. So it might be beneficial to some of you guys, or you guys might interpret it, and when you guys might want to use that information for something. So we included it there. It's all in the article that it's cited under. So
that's more like intervention. If you're asked like a follow-up question, like, okay, those are the ways you can assess, but once you get those results, what does that mean? Where do you go from there? So you can refer to this and be like, well, one way they learn, or if at this age, then this is what can be done. Extra information.
Yeah, and so like I had said before, it's the same thing. You're just going to be looking at the behavioral data, like the play scales, seeing again how they're doing at that time in their development versus how they should, versus, just comparing how they were and how they are now. Because I don't think, unless the norms are normed on cochlear implant children, are they? For the play scales? They're not, right?
I didn't see.
Yeah, so.
And
And then
you can use, I looked up a few things about that, and Westby mentions that it can be used for children with hearing impairment, so just mention that.
Do you want me to do the home screen?
That's fine.
Okay, so how do you want to present on bilateral or?
yeah, I guess that'll be easier. And so then another part of the question asks if we should go mono or bi for the
Actually,
implants. Or do you
okay,
want to go first?
if you guys have read this question, what is your take on it? It doesn't ask you what we think, whether we should think, it doesn't ask us whether we think we should give them mono or bi. It just asks us if we would give them cochlear implants. Or actually, that's what I'm asking. Like, how do you guys interpret this? Where is it?
I was looking up for attendance.
Okay, right here. If she would be a candidate for either mono or bi.
I think that it would be good to be prepared to answer that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think like a
one reference type.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So we have that.
Because there's been a push towards the bilateral ones, right?
Right. So I don't know if they want us to like address, oh, we want bilateral because of this, or we just think their cochlear implant in general is a good step, and whatever the team decides is their decision. So I wasn't sure, but either way, we have articles to support it. So if you're pressed for it, then the information is right here.
Or what insurance will cover too.
Right.
Right.
So yeah, I would. Yeah. So sorry.
So yeah, so it's just, these are the two articles that supported for bi, and it was basically talking because of the, what's that word I'm looking for? Besides the intelligibility that they would be able to, what's that word? It starts with an I, doesn't it? Like, they're, what's that word?
What do you say?
Localization. No, it wasn't.
Doesn't
It doesn't an L. I was confused. Localization. They have better localization abilities if they have 2 versus 1. And then there's also, I didn't cite it, but I will be putting information as well for factors to consider when, that were posted by Asha for when you're going to implant a child. And of course, Keith mentioned in my midterm that every site, every like cochlear implant place is going to have different recommendations, right? So like Asha, I think last year I saw that it had like over 2 or up, and versus like some have like 12 months, right? So it's going to depend on that aspect as well, like on which one you pull the information from. But just so you know that they all vary in what they think is appropriate. But there's some factors that should be considered, which fall in line with this child, that she should have it, so it's nothing to worry about, but I'll include the information. And there's also research to show, which I will cite and have for you guys, that at that level of hearing loss with hearing aids, they're not going to be doing much benefit to that child, and there's research to show that it just doesn't really help with their intelligibility or their perception or their input. So therefore, if you do, when you go back to the argument about 1 or 2, if you have one cochlear implant but then the other one isn't being useful in terms of the input that it's receiving, then you might as well just do 2, like a little bit delayed between the surgeries or but still 2 overall, because if that input's not being useful. It's like you do one when it's not that bad, when it's like moderate, when it's more controversial and you kind of like don't know which way to go. But for this case, it would be bilateral.
And I feel like it could be just a safety net if we just say, like, in the ideal world, if money and all these things were an issue and we could just give it out, then we would go with bilateral, and this is why. Good.
Yep.
Okay, so my last point to wrap it up is the multicultural